Well, today it's the final chapter of Mr. Majeika by Humphrey Carpenter, illustrated by Frank Rogers. As I told you before, it's a puffin book. Chapter 8, Hamish the Good. At first, no one could believe it was as simple as that. But in the end, Mr. Majeika convinced them all. "I've remembered what I was taught as an apprentice wizard," he said. "If anyone gets a horrid affliction or disease as a result of behaving nastily to someone," he said, "they have to be good for a certain period of time and it will go away. So Hamish will have to be good until, well, I should think until the end of term should just about do it. What do you think about that, Hamish?" Hamish Bigmore looked at Mr. Majeika gloomily. "Isn't there an easier way?" he said. Mr. Majeika shook his head. "I'm afraid not," he said. "For the next week or so, Hamish, you will have to behave like an entirely different person. You must become utterly and completely good." Hamish sat in silence, stunned by this news. "He'll never manage it," said Pete to Thomas. "Not a hope." But the surprising thing was that by next day, Hamish obviously was managing it. Up to now, he'd always arrived late at school in the morning with some silly excuse he dreamt up. But today, Class 3 found him already sitting at his desk when they arrived. And when Mr. Majeika came into the classroom, he saw that there was a bunch of wildflowers in a jam jar on his table. "Oh," he said, "did one of the girls put this here?" There was a general shaking of heads, and Hamish spoke up. "No, sir." He'd never called Mr. Majeika or any of the other teachers sir before. "It was me, sir. I picked them from the hedgerow on my way to school. Don't you think they're pretty, sir?" Mr. Majeika looked at Hamish Bigmore suspiciously. "Don't overdo it, Hamish," he said warningly. "Just being normally good, like everyone else, will be quite enough." But Hamish said nothing. They began lessons. Normally, Hamish Bigmore interrupted Mr. Majeika at least once every 5 minutes with some silly question or rude comment. But today, he was completely silent. Mr. Majeika obviously couldn't believe it, for he kept casting uneasy glances in Hamish's direction to make sure he wasn't up to something nasty. But not at all. Hamish was very hard at work, and at the end of the lesson, he handed a neatly written workbook to Mr. Majeika. Class 3 had been asked to write something describing a scene in the country, and Hamish's piece was all about sweet little buttercups and little woolly lambs jumping about in the meadows. "Are you trying to pull my leg, Hamish Bigmore?" said Mr. Majeika. But once again, Hamish made no reply. It was the same at dinner time. Mr. Majeika had explained to Mr. Potter and the rest of the school that something peculiar had happened to Hamish's teeth, but they would soon be all right again, providing nobody took any notice. So Hamish was allowed to have school dinner with everyone else. Usually he fooled around like mad at dinner time and made a dreadful nuisance of himself to the dinner ladies. But today, everything was different. He not only ate his own dinner as quietly as a mouse, but after it was finished, he began to collect up all the other children's dirty plates, knives, forks and spoons, saying to the dinner ladies, "Oh, do let me help, please. Is there anything I can do?" After a bit, one of the dinner ladies went to Mr. Majeika to complain. "That boy from your class," she said, "is giving us all the creeps." "Do you mean his teeth?" asked Mr. Majeika. "No, he can't help those, poor dear," said the dinner lady. "I mean his interference. He doesn't mean to be a nuisance, the poor creature, but he keeps fussing round us, trying to help all the time, and we can't get the washing up done. What's wrong with him? The other kids never behave like that." Mr. Majeika sighed. "I'm afraid he's suffering from an attack of being good," he said. Nor was this the end of Hamish Bigmore's helping. At the end of afternoon school, he hurried round to the nursery class and was soon to be seen helping the little children on with their coats and holding the door open for the mothers who had come to collect them. Unfortunately, nobody in the nursery had been told about Hamish Bigmore's vampire teeth, and the air was soon filled with the screams of terrified mothers. "It's Dracula himself, risen from the grave!" cried one of the more highly strung ladies. Mr. Majeika, summoned to the disturbance, told Hamish Bigmore to stop helping and to go home at once. But the damage was done, and it was several days before some of the mothers would venture out of doors again with their toddlers. Every day for a week, Hamish Bigmore thought of some new way of helping someone at St. Barty's, and by the end of the week, everyone in the school was a nervous wreck. Everyone, that is, except Mr. Potter. Somehow, Hamish's good deeds had failed to cause any trouble to the head teacher. On the last morning of term, Hamish Bigmore arrived at school with his teeth looking perfectly normal again, and there was a gleam in his eye. "Well, I think I've managed it," he said to Pete and Thomas. "Your teeth?" they said. "Yes, you have. They look quite ordinary again. Mr. Majeika was right then. It worked." "No, not that, idiots," said Hamish Bigmore scornfully, and his goodness seemed to have vanished now that his teeth were back to normal. "Just you wait and see what I mean." The day ended with the whole school gathered in the assembly hall to listen to Mr. Potter. "I want you all to enjoy your holidays," he said, "but before you go, there's one last thing. Those of you who have been at St. Barty's for some time will know that on the last day of the Easter term, I always give a prize, the Headmaster's Medal for Good Conduct. And as you may also know, beside the medal, there's also £10 in cash for the boy or girl who wins it. Each year I look for one boy or girl whose behaviour has been really good and who has tried to be a real help to everyone at the school. And this term, I have no hesitation in awarding the prize to Hamish Bigmore." There was a gasp of surprise and, especially from class 3, a howl of rage. "So that's what he was up to," gasped Pete. "He didn't care about the teeth at all. He just wanted the money. Well, of all that, jolly well done, Hamish Bigmore," said Mr. Potter, hanging the medal round Hamish's neck and giving him an envelope containing the money. "Thank you, sir," said Hamish Bigmore, and he stuck out his tongue at class 3. After it was all over, everyone crowded round Mr. Majeika. "Wasn't that wicked of Hamish Bigmore?" Jodie asked him. "Did you know what he was up to?" Mr. Majeika shook his head. "I'd never heard of the Good Conduct Medal," he said, "or I might have guessed why for 2 pins I'd turn that medal into a toad." "Oh, go on, Mr. Magic, please do," they all said, but he shook his head. "No, my friends, no more magic, at least not this term." "Will you be here next term, Mr. Magic?" Jodie asked excitedly. Mr. Majeika nodded. "Hooray!" they all said, and then Thomas added as an afterthought, "Well, don't let Hamish Bigmore ever be good again. It's more than we can bear." I hope you enjoyed that book. Stay tuned for our next story tomorrow.